Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the ribs. In the last video, I talked about the sternum, and today we're going to continue with the skeleton of the thoracic cage. So just the thoracic cage, and we're going to be talking about the ribs. All right. So in our body, we have 12 ribs. All right. And these 12 ribs are divided into three groups. So we have the true ribs, the false ribs, and the floating ribs. Let's go one by one. All right. So as you can see, these numbers from 1 to 7, these are called the true ribs. Why do we call them the true ribs? Because as you can see, these ribs, each one of them has their own costal cartilage. And each costal cartilage of these 7 first ribs is directly attached to the sternum in a place that we call a notch. So here you go. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All of these are directly attached to the sternum, and they are attached in these places that we call the costal notches. So each of these ribs has its own costal notch. On the other hand, we have the false ribs. So this is the 8, this is 9, and this is 10. From 8 to 10, these 3 ribs are called the false ribs because they're still attached to the sternum, but they are not directly attached to the sternum. So they are attached through the 7th cartilage. Okay, so they all attach to the 7th cartilage like this, and then the 7th cartilage attaches to the sternum. So they are not directly attached to the sternum, and so they don't have their own notches on the sternum. So yeah, they don't have their own notches, so they're not, independent in a way. Okay, and then we have the last 2. They're called the floating ribs. You probably heard of these. They're very famous. A lot of people mention them, but these are called the attached at all to the sternum. And there are a lot of muscular structures all around them that, allow them to stay in place. And yeah, they're only attached to the spine on T11 and T12 respectively. Okay. Now let's go and study the structure of a rib. So as I said, we have 12 ribs, and these ribs are pretty different from each other. I mean, each one of them has their own, special structures, and it has, some special things. But first of all, we're gonna study like the general structure of a rib, and then we're gonna go by one, and we're gonna see the special things in each rib. Okay, as a typical rib, we're gonna study the 6th rib, for example. So let me isolate it. Here you go. So here we are looking from a posterior view. As you can see, this is the spine, and we're looking from a posterior view. All right. So let me go first. So here, this region in a circle is a very small posterior region, but it's very important because it's with this region that the rib attaches to the spine, to the thoracic vertebrae. So this little structure is composed of 3 structures. So we have the head of the rib, the tubercle, which is a little eminence, and then between the 2, we have this Lincoln region, which is called the neck. So let me just show you in the 3D model. Here you go. So, okay, sorry. This is the head of the rib, this is the neck, and this is the tubercle. So as I said, this is where the articulation between the rib and the thoracic vertebrae happens. And so we're going to look at the different, articulating regions here. So I'm gonna hide the pins so we can see better. Here you go. So now let's first look at the head. So the head has, generally speaking, so there are some exceptions here and we're gonna go and see them later, but generally speaking, the head has two articulating regions. We have a superior region, which is this one, so the superior articular facet of the head. And then we have an inferior one. And between the two, we have a crest. And so the head articulates with the bodies of the vertebrae. So I'm going to show you the vertebrae in a minute. So let's just hide all of this. Just going to hide certain things so that it's easier to see. Okay, so we have the sixth rib. We have, okay, sorry. I'm gonna hide this. So as you can see here, we have the head of the rib. So this part, so this, it's hard to see, but it's this. Oh, okay, sorry. Anyway, so this is, as you can see, hopefully you can see it. So this is the head, and here we have T5 and T6. All right, and this is the sixth rib, and so it attaches to two vertebrae at once. So it's not like one rib attaches to one vertebra. It's just one rib that attaches to two vertebrae. And so with the superior facet, articular facet, it attaches to the inferior costal region of the body of the upper rib. And then with the inferior facet of the head, it articulates with the superior facet of the body of the vertebra that is below. Okay, so it's very clear here in the 3D model. So basically the head has two regions and they attach to two vertebrae, and it's on the body of the vertebra. All right. Okay. Now here we have the neck, and here we have the tubercle. And on the tubercle, we only have one facet. So the articular facet of the tubercle, and this facet attaches to the transverse process of the lower vertebra. So the one that comes below the rib. So it attaches here, as you can see. So it's on the head and on the tubercle that the rib attaches to the spine. Okay, so the neck doesn't have any articular facet. All right. So this is the articulation between the spine and the ribs. So now that we're over with the posterior region, let's go and look at the rest. So the rest of the rib, all of this, is called the shaft. Okay, this is the shaft of the rib, and it just goes around. So the shaft, generally speaking, has two sides. It has, well, I'm gonna isolate this again. So it has a lateral side. So we can call it the shaft or the body. Okay, so it has a lateral side and it has a medial side that is a little bit inferior. All right, so yeah. And here a little bit posteriorly we have the costal angle. All right, and as we go down, the costal angle actually goes a little bit more laterally. So it goes from posterior to a little bit more lateral as we go down. All right, and so here we have an important thing actually. As you can see here, this is called the costal groove, and this is at the bottom of the medial side of the shaft. And this region, why is it important? Because it contains a very important bundle. It's a neurovascular bundle that has, a vein, an artery, and a nerve. So these three elements, they just go like this. So, and they go in order from above to below as van. So it spells like van, okay? So VA and N. So van. So V is for vein, and then A is for artery, and N is for nerve. And so they go like this, right? So in this order, so they go like this, and then this, and then this, okay? They go like this. And generally speaking, the nerve is it comes a little bit below, it's not exactly inside of the groove. And sometimes we can even find these whole elements, all of it, the whole bundle, all of this. So all of this is called the bundle, and we can find it a little bit below the rib. So it's not always inside of the groove, but generally speaking, it is inside of the groove. All right. Now, the shaft also has this interior region. So this is where it articulates with the sternum. There you go. And we have the costal cartilage, and the region between the cartilage and the bone, that region of the bone is flat, okay? So yeah, now we went through the general structure of a rib. Now let's talk about the special things that each rib has. Let's start off with the first rib. So this one. So the first rib is very particular, As you can see, the first thing that you can notice is that, well, earlier I said that generally speaking, ribs have a medial and a lateral side. Well, this rib doesn't have a medial side. It has a superior side and an inferior side, all right? So its direction is a little bit different. And it doesn't have a costal groove below. As you can see, it doesn't have a costal groove, and so that bundle kind of like lays underneath this this rib, and it's not contained in a groove. And now the articulation with T1 is a little bit particular, because if you look at the head of this rib, it has only one articular facet, so it doesn't have two. One is superior and one is inferior, so it has only one facet, and it articulates with only T1, so it only articulates with one vertebra, not like the other ribs, okay? And yeah, now we have something other than this that is particular on the superior side of this first rib. Here, as you can see, we have a groove. It's the groove for the subclavian vein. So this is where the subclavian vein passes. And right behind it, we have another groove. And this groove is for the subclavian artery. And between the two, we have a little, kind of like a eminence. It's called the scalene tubercle. So this is where the the anterior scalene muscle attaches, and I'm gonna show you in a second an image that shows this perfectly. So it's very well portrayed in this image, as you can see. So we have the subclavian vein interiorly, and then we have posteriorly the subclavian artery, and between the two we have the anterior scalene. So these scalene muscles, we actually have three scalene muscles. We have the anterior, the middle, and the posterior one, and they attach on the first and the second rib. And so between the middle scalene, and the anterior one, this is where the subclavian artery passes. Okay, so yeah, this is just a little detail. Now let's go on to the second rib. So this rib doesn't have a lot of particularities apart from the fact that it doesn't have a groove either. So its direction is just a little bit similar to the first rib, you know. So the first rib is completely horizontal, and then this rib goes a little bit, you know, it's you know, the ribs, they gradually become vertical. So not vertical, yeah, vertical. So they start off as having, you know, a superior side and then an inferior side like the first rib, and then slowly they will have, you know, a lateral side and medial side. And so this second rib is kind of like a transition between the two. So so this side, the upper side, is not exactly, you know, a superior side, but it's not a lateral side. So yeah, and it doesn't have a groove either. So yeah. Um, for the articulation of this rib is it's a typical articulation. So it articulates with two vertebrae. So it articulates with T1 and T2. So just like I explained earlier, it has a very typical articulation here. So yeah, it doesn't have much things that are special. Now for the rest, so we have 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All of these have just the general structure that I explained earlier, so they don't really have any particular things going on. Okay, now, and even 8 and 9 and 10, they don't have any particularities either. So from 3 to 10, they all have a general structure, and they're all similar. Now we have these two special ribs, so the 11 and the 12. So the 11 and 12, well, obviously they're particular because they don't attach to the sternum. So as you can see, their interior edge is not flat like this one. It is pointy, okay? And their tubercles are not as apparent. So I'm going to isolate the 12, for example. As you can see, the tubercle is very, very small. They basically don't have a tubercle. They still have an articular facet, but they don't really have a tubercle. So yes, very small. And they articulate, their articulation is just like the first rib, you know, so they don't have two facets on the head. So they only have one facet. So the 11th rib articulates only with T11, and the 12th articulates only with T12. And the other thing is the very last rib, the 12, doesn't have a costal groove either. So yeah. So I think we went over everything. So this is just basically how the ribs are. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please leave a like and leave a comment, and please subscribe for more content, and good luck with your exams, I guess. Thank you.